Two lies, one truth. Me and Warren Buffett are best friends. We used to smoke J's behind the gym shed at Woodrow High in 96. You're listening to Off the Top Podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to another one. The reason I'm dropping Warren Buffett's name today is because we're going to be talking about investing stock today. But before we get into that, Julian, how are we doing?
Doing pretty good. I think you're going to have to catch me up after this podcast about you and Warren Buffett catching up behind the gym.
Yeah, it was just me, Sloan Ketter, Johnny Hopkins, and Brennan from the Step Brothers. So it was a good time.
Crazy. Sounds like a severe investment in time. And in today's society, we find that the access to digital apps and to money is a lot easier than it has been in the past. And we felt it was an appropriate time to kind of break down the large amount of apps that there are out there that you may have heard or you may be using, and kind of break down some of the differences, some of the different purposes, and hopefully help you out if you are interested in starting to invest using these apps.
I think that's really well said. And the fact of today, since this ease of information and this plethora of options that we have as far as anything, and investment apps are, no exception to that. So, diving into this, hopefully what you can get out of this podcast is that you're going to learn a lot about the options that are out there. You're going to learn a lot about the options that you're using, and, learn the pros and cons of some of these guys too. So jumping into it, what do you think? Do you use any of these investment apps, Julian?
I've not used any of the apps yet. And the reason behind that is essentially I want to make sure before that I'm using these apps that I'm in financial shape. And by being in financial shape, I want to make sure, I have a good emergency fund saved or savings saved up. I want to make sure that I'm able to pay my bills on time and have extra cash or extra money that is able to go into a budget to invest. And I want to make sure, what my long-term and short-term goals are, so that when I do my research and learn from this podcast about these apps, which one best suits my needs and where I'm looking at to allocate my budget.
Very well said. And I think, that's really, really sound thinking and logic when it comes to, you make sure that we're all set, and then let's go and adventure in, investing in X, Y, or Z. And let's say that we get to that point. There are a few options that you have as far as, if you wanted to just look into pure, stock trading and trading of different, mainly stocks and then derivatives once you get a little bit more advanced in there. But what I would recommend, the thing that I do is I do use Robinhood, which is probably one of my favorite app investing or like investment apps. And I'm sure you guys have heard of it. It's basically, the whole premise of it is that it's the best, or I've read in articles that it's best for trading stocks for free.
Yeah, and Robinhood is a free app, and it really works with, like Jordan said, stocks and ETFs. And the nice thing about it too is, as we progress with society and everyone wants to know what Bitcoin is or what digital currency is, Robinhood now supports small features for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So that way, if you are interested in both worlds of digital and physical money, Robinhood's got you covered.
Yeah, it's also, kind of exactly to pick up where you left off. The really cool thing about Robinhood is that they're kind of, I feel like, on the leading edge of a lot of this stuff. Granted, in their inception of, free trading is in the fact of you don't have to pay commission fees when you buy or sell, equities or any investment vehicle that they offer, which is really awesome. And so what else do? They also allow you to trade like Adidas and a few stocks that are outside of basically the US stock market, which is really cool. Another thing too is that they also allow you to leverage up here and there. And the main meaning of leverage up is that they will basically once you sign up and you have to pay for a premium membership, you will be allowed to use like $5,000 more of your, of what you have as far as cash goes to trade and stuff through their platform.
And with Robinhood, one of the things that makes it stand out is it's more for the sophisticated investor, someone who understands how the market works or some strategies or some things they may be looking into when investing. Like Jordan said, looking at foreign markets or understanding, the ETFs and stocks or how the market is moving at that point. And that's really the great thing about Robinhood for being free is it's your foot in the door to be in the real world market and work on various scales. But with that being said, that is also one of the cons of Robinhood is if you are a novice or, infant in investing, it may be a little bit over your head and what is going on, or it may not be leading you as far forward as you'd like it to.
Very, very good point. And that's something I was going to mention too. With the plethora of options and the scale that they allow you to kind of like work within the investment world and the tools they allow you to have, there is, it's a double-edged sword in effect of if you know how to use these things and you've educated yourself and you've kind of like had some experience, then it, turns into a different thing where you have, extended, margin accounts and, you're trading in options and things of that nature. When if you're somewhat of a novice, then some of those things can be a little daunting and kind of usher you away from some of those good features. But in the same sense, that's I feel like kind of more of a well-rounded look of Robinhood and the fact of it gives you a lot of options and maybe it's not that beginner friendly, but there are a chunk of apps that I would assume are very beginner friendly and kind of usher you into the investment world without, almost dumping the world of options on you. And Julian, do you have one of those?
An app that isn't going to dump the world of options on me.
Yeah.
I would say a great one for beginners from the preliminary research I've done is I really like what Acorn has done so far.
Yeah, the infamous Acorn. And for folks who don't know what Acorn is about, there's a few that follow the same line of Acorn. So I'm going to just, if you guys will play, work with me, I'm going to lump in a few others like Stash and put that into the Acorn treehouse. Pun intended. So what Acorn does is basically it allows you to contribute funds to sectors and industries in the sense of and it's a very interesting way as well. So basically, let's say that me and you, listener, we're out for coffee and I have an Acorn account and I'm like, no, you're my favorite listener of all of the entire world. Thank you for, leaving a review on, the platform that you listen to Off the Top on. Thank you for like hitting a like and stuff like that. So I'm going to take you out for coffee, charge the coffee on my credit card. And let's say it comes out to, $4.36. And the remainder of that $4 mark to $5, which I'm probably going to get roasted on the internet, but I believe that's 64 cents if I'm not incorrect. And so that will basically get taken out of that transaction. You'll be charged $5 and that 64 cents will be going into your Acorn account. And what happens there is that it gets, distributed and into an ETF to basically whatever industry that you were interested in.
And that's one of the things I like about Acorn for beginners is it helps kind of track regular spend as well. So you get to see what you're spending and where, that spare or micro investing, that spare change is being sent to from, certain purchases. And the other thing that I really think Acorn does well is they've grown their business and this idea so wide that they have various partners such as Walmart. And if you are shopping at Walmart, the Found Money Institute, or Found Money essentially is what they call it, invest that money into an account when shopping with certain partners. So it's almost like a little added bonus when you're investing. The downside with that being is if you're buying something that is $3.95, you're really only investing 5 cents at a time, but it is a great place to start and understand how that works and how you're allocating your money essentially.
That's I feel like why Acorn has been such a, caught on fire with a lot of people is the fact of it's almost autonomous in the way of, oh, like, I just went out to grab some milk, but I also just invested into, like my investment portfolio, so to speak. So that's very salacious that you have this kind of multitasking effect going on. The thing, though, is like you mentioned, Julian, if you kind of are investing 5 cents, you got to think as well that there are fees on top of that. And so these are about I think one of the 5 professionally managed ETF portfolios that you can invest in on Acorn. So they're professionally managed. So there's a fee for that. There's a fee for basically putting your money in and just keeping it there. So eventually, depending on how much money you put in, sometimes it almost negates the effects of the returns at the end of the day. And so that's my one con for Acorn, is that the way it's built is beautiful, but sometimes when you look at real world cases, it stops penciling out a little bit, or basically those hard black lines of this is a good investment or not get a little bit more fuzzy.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why before you find one of these apps that works for you is you should be doing your research beforehand, because commissions and fees on these apps vary drastically, I would say, in some instances. Like you may only be investing 5 cents, but there's a fee on it, or the minimum on this certain app is $500 investment. So knowing that beforehand is going to help you out in the long run, so that when you understand that not everything, since it's a free app, is free, or that you're only paying $1 a month, that there isn't an extra hidden cost in there.
Exactly. And so that we can like move on, I know I mentioned Stash earlier and how it's like still in that Acorn family. And so Stash is basically very similar to Acorn, but it doesn't allow you to invest automatically in the cases that Acorn does allow you to. And sometimes I think that is also a very a good idea as well. So for instance, you can manage your, the money that you invest a lot more fine tuned, or have a finer tuned touch on it, so that, instead of like putting like 5 cents, 6 cents, 25 cents here and there, you can just like automatically say like, all right, so I'm going to, give up this X amount of money, put it in Stash, and put it in X and Y and Z things, like you can do in both. And another cool thing too is that you can build your own custom portfolio, and also you can set up auto stash, which is a plan of basically reoccurring investments, which a lot of these sites hold.
Yeah. And one thing Jordan alluded to there was the great thing about Stash is that it's also a very educative platform. So it's going to help you with various articles, tips, reviews of the market. When you're making an investment, it's going to give you, some sort of suggestion or bump to understand, this is a trending stock, or this is something that you may want to think about when investing. And it's going to give you kind of that in between Acorn and Robinhood. And that's something I really liked about it, is having that kind of, independence, but there's a little bit of backup to it if you aren't 100% comfortable in that environment. Though most of the time it is micro transactions or micro trades, it is still going to give you a lot more knowledge than Acorn is going to give you, but it isn't going to dump as much information on you, like Jordan said with Robinhood.
I think that basically really paints a really good picture, Julian, and the fact of it's in that intermediary. And I think that's probably, if you have an interest in investing and you just kind of don't know where to start, maybe that's where you kind of open the door to it. Just in the fact of, you're a little bit more involved. You're actually putting in the funds, or you're setting up timetables where the funds will, reoccurringly be extracted or added to your investment portfolio. And in the same sense, it's, you're not going to be inundated with in-depth analysis or research on these companies, but what it'll give you is just kind of this finer, or like kind of like generally, good investment practices and ideas to think about and principles and things of that nature. So it definitely toes the line or straddles it of being both, in the fact of, it's a little bit more like Acorn in the fact of, it's not giving you in-depth analysis and stuff like that, but it's also on the same end of, Robinhood, where it's not transactional purpose or like, transactional things that are helping you invest. It's you are actually, actively looking into this and saying, I'm going to put X amount of money in there. And I would say if I was to do this all over again, I'd probably go with Stash.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that I enjoy about Stash is that it kind of arranges these ETFs into, user-friendly categories or companies so that they're a little bit easier to find and search. And that makes me think of kind of the organization of some of these apps. And that's where I, eventually like the idea of Betterment. And what Betterment does is it's a combo of software or robo advisors and human advisors. So these previous ones we've talked about, for the most part, have kind of been a robo advisor where they might help you out a little bit or might give you some suggestions here and there. But Betterment's kind of give you the best of both worlds in that case.
Yeah. And so what Betterment is, I guess it's, from my research, it's based out of New York, and it's registered on the, securities, the SEC, and it's like just an online investment company. And I think that this is one of those where it's, a lot of these are growing up, or, popping up and growing, where basically it's almost like, it's people who demand better is one of their, catchphrases, and the fact of, it's for the actual investor, and you can kind of choose what you want to do. If you're a new investor, they have a route for you in that. If you're kind of like a hands-off investor, they have a route for you in that sense. And also if you're a hands-on investor, so they give you the they give you the options of what you want to be as far as an investor, and then they will help you along in that sense as well, which I find really, really cool.
And for someone who's a little bit more experienced in investing, what apps are you using, Jordan, at this time?
So I have a few that I use. Obviously, like I mentioned, I use Robinhood. I also have my banking apps. So for instance, like Ally Bank, because they do offer a really, really strong savings rate, and they're not afraid to bump it up whenever, market factors indicate to that being a best a best move. I also use, let me get out my phone so I can, straight from the horse's mouth here.
Yeah, and it's crazy to see how easily accessible some of these things are, whether it be on your phone, which Jordan is pulling out of his pocket, or whether it be, through your bank. There's all these different avenues in which you can go, and it's truly about finding what is going to work for you, because everyone's different. Everyone has different ideas. Our suggestions may work best for us and our way of thinking, as, another direction may be best for you and your way of thinking. So there's not saying there's only one way to do this or only certain apps to go there. There's hundreds of thousands of apps out there, and it's really up to you to find the one that you feel comfortable investing your hard-earned money into.
Exactly. And so now that I have my phone up, I have an actual folder named Finance. So I'm just going to run through all of these for you. And maybe a little bit, might be a tiny bit redundant, but you'll see what I am into. So the first one is Robinhood, which obviously we talked about. The second one is Seeking Alpha, which basically is a equities and investment vehicles and kind of like an economic board where people will post articles that are very, very well written about a current and future economic, happenings as far as in the world of finance as well. So if you wanted to do some research and, get the ideas of some very, educated people and sharp guys in the industry, then that would be a good spot. I have Merrill Lynch, which my employer, had their 401k through. I have Ally Bank, like I mentioned. I also have Chase Bank. I have E-Trade. I have Mint, which isn't particularly an investment app, but it does track like costs and expenses, and so I can see where my money's going. I have Ameritrade, and then finally I have Yahoo Finance bringing up the rear, which obviously will give me updates as far as what's happening. And, I could quickly look and see like, oh, okay, so X, Y, or Z is doing this. This is when, this company's dropping their, their earnings report, or like, their 10Q for, last quarter, or X, Y, such and such. So those are the guys that I use. And I probably use them the popular ones I'll use, multiple times a day, like Robinhood, and, Yahoo Finance. But for the most part, I feel like a little bit redundant. I have multiple, stock brokerage apps on there, but it's kind of like how I just ended up. And you'll have this, when you go through life, you might have this compartmentalizing as well with your finances, where, like I mentioned, an employer might use Merrill Lynch, but you also use Robinhood, and then your employee stock purchasing plan might be an E-Trade. And so all of that, happens. And I think the key to managing all those things is just, always checking up on it and, taking the time to understand, like, this is what's happening right now. And if you wanted to, converge all of those together, you can do that, and it's not too hard. But if you didn't, then that's a totally fine option as well.
Yeah. And like we touched on, there's tons of ways to go about it. Some areas where I personally step on the edge of discretion is the more, to me, like, was that more so the apps, not so much the banks or institutions, but some of these apps, the more and more information you put out there, the more and more your information is out there. Not saying that's a bad thing, not saying it's a great thing, but it is just something to think about and form your opinion about. So to me, like, that's why I'm doing a lot of research before I jump into one of these, to make sure it's something I could see myself being with long term, and being beneficial in the long run, rather than have my information in, 45 different places where I'm only using 5 of those places, and my information is just sitting with this company for, something I tried out for a little while, and I should have just done more research beforehand.
Yeah, I think it's a very case by case basis for sure. And another thing too, it's a very case by case basis when it comes to where you get your information, where you invest in, who you invest with. So don't end your investment and app research and investment research in general with this podcast. I've strongly implore you to find elsewhere. And the fact of, you'll find these interesting gems, or, you might stumble upon like e-money companies, which is a whole nother beast where, they're not necessarily a bank, but they're also this platform where you can hold your money, you can invest, you can do multiple things. So it's there's so much knowledge out there. I think the key is not to be intimidated by it and just kind of like take it one step at a time, like me, Warren Buffett, and those guys were doing back in '96.
And I know listeners, you're asking, there's one thing you guys haven't touched on. There's one thing I'm really interested in. It's worth a lot of money, and that's digital currency. And at least for my research, it seems like the most verified place right now is Coinbase, where I just learned the founder of Coinbase, the CEO, Brian Armstrong, just became a billionaire like yesterday, the day before we created this podcast, which is absurd. So if you're looking, in that digital currency space, do a little bit of research, find out where you want to go. Like Robinhood hosts a little bit of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Coinbase does a lot of it. It'll help educate you a little bit. And, if you're interested in digital currency, feel free to find out, what best suits you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think that there's no bad leads and there's no bad information. I mean, maybe except like your uncle's buddy who lives on Redondo Beach, who claims he made it big with Ethereum or Ethereum Lite. But other than that, man, just be sponges out there. Do your research and always look at things with a shrewd eye.
Yeah, and if you guys are wondering what you should invest in, I think you should invest in Off the Top Podcast. We love your support. Give us a favorite or a like on your favorite platform. Find us on social at Off the Top Cast. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We'd love to interact with you and see your ideas. We've spoken with a few of you a few times over the past week, and it's been awesome. So we really appreciate the support.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, guys, we love you guys. You guys are awesome. Let's take this relationship to the next level and lock it in. Just subscribe, leave a review. It's gonna be that cute story when I introduce you to my parents. We can be like, yeah, we met on the internet, mom and dad, but guess what? This is true love. All right, guys. Catch you later.
Yeah, guys, it's the fastest archaeologist in the world, and we're running out here. Have a good one.